Welcome back to Rock Forever. We've got a very special guest. You know his past music, and you're going to love his new music. Of course, as the guitarist with the group Boston, Orion, The Hunter, RTZ, and of course, the new group Barry Goudreau's Engine Room. Please welcome Barry Goudreau.
How we doing?
Welcome, welcome. Great to see you, man. You got a nice, colorful, red pinkish background. We love that. Now
Don't judge me by the background.
I know you started playing music at an early age, you know, picking up a guitar from a friend around 11 and taking lessons around 13 and stuff. Talk about who were some of your favorite artists back then. Who really inspired you? Like, I got to pick up a guitar. This is too much fun.
Well, when I first started to play back when I was very young at 11 years old, I remember, hearing Elvis and Roy Orbison and those kind of acts. And, that's really what tweaked my interest. But after I started playing, I was a big Ventures fan. They were really big back in the early 60s, and of course the early Beach Boys records. So when I got my first electric guitar, a 1962 Stratocaster, I was just thrilled to death because I had the same guitar as the Ventures played and the same guitar that the Beach Boys played.
Yeah, I know that's an exciting feeling, is to just hear yourself, on a guitar, making some noise that sounds somewhat in tune, somewhat, in the same stratosphere as these great artists. And, tell us about how that evolved, getting your electric gear. And I know you, knew Brad Delp early on, and I guess even you and Tom Scholz and Brad as early as 69, were doing some demos. So talk about how that developed into, your projects and how it all grew.
Well, I graduated high school in 1969 and went off to Boston University. And a friend of mine who I played in a band in high school with was across the river at MIT. And, I was the first one in my family to go to college. So I was really trying to concentrate on college and, step away from the music. But I still wanted to play. So he and I started a band just to kick around and have some fun with it. And we played the fraternity parties at his fraternity over in MIT. And we decided to add a keyboard player. So I put an ad in the local paper for a keyboard player, and Tom Scholz answered the ad. Of course, Tom had just graduated from MIT with a master's degree in 5 years and was off, working at Polaroid at that point. So for him, it was a really comfortable situation to come back at MIT and be around on campus and around, MIT people. And that's when he and I first started working together. And it was shortly after that we recorded our first song together, which was called San Francisco Day, which ended up being a hitch ride on the first Boston record.
Wow. Life would have been different if you pursued that geology degree, huh?
Well, I came to the realization that in geology, there are one or two jobs. You either work for an oil company or you work for the government. And after I thought about it, neither one of those really appealed to me very much. But as it turns out, after I had been in college for 3 years, my dad, who had an auto body shop, had a heart attack and wasn't able to continue working. So I left college at that point, went back to run the auto body shop, which I did for a few years before the first Boston album came out.
Well, I must say, for us music lovers, we appreciate you making the right choice.
Yeah, well, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I gotta say that the day the first Boston album came out, I was a freshman in high school up on the Canadian border in Washington State, right below Vancouver.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it must have been they were playing it in the record store. I love the cover. I bought the album. Yeah, really hadn't heard it, and went back to my dorm room and started cranking it up. And I swear I must have made thousands of new friends because everybody would drag their friends up to my dorm room and say, play that album again. You know, some of them didn't even know what the name of the band was, but man, put that on, play that record, you know?
Well,
And
I love hearing the stories of people that heard the record for the first time. Everybody seems to have one. And, I was driving in my Camaro when that came on, and I couldn't believe, how different it sounded. But, though that it's, 45 years in the past now that people still have those memories and still listen to the music is really pretty incredible.
well, I always like to be a leader rather than a follower. I must say, I was the leader. I was the first person I knew to have that album, and I'm sure I helped a few get sold because everybody clamored around. And music is so communal like that. It's so great to share something that people don't know about. Like you turn them on to something that later became real big, and you can remember you were there as a kind of a pioneer, hearing it early. Now talk
Sure.
about putting those demos together, because I know this was all done in Tom's basement studio and all that. But your memories of working on those early songs, obviously More Than a Feeling and Peace of Mind and Long Time and Rock and Roll Band. Talk about your best memories of putting that record together and hitting the road.
Well, the first recording that we did that I just mentioned, the song San Francisco Day, was in a proper recording studio. And after that, Tom started to put together his own gear, and he actually built his own tape deck, and put together enough equipment to start recording. So we started doing the recordings in his basement. Uh, I just actually came across a cassette that had all the early recordings on it. It's pretty incredible to listen to. The quality isn't of the recording isn't great, but really interesting to listen to. There's actually two songs on there, and one has the verse for More Than a Feeling, and another song has the chorus for the More Than a Feeling. So that's sort of how things came together. Obviously those two songs became one, and it became the song More Than a Feeling. And a lot of the songs were like that. There were bits and pieces, and they get turned around in different configurations, and eventually ended up being that demo tape that got the recording contract.
Yeah, the best parts, always rise to the top, and it makes the perfect meal. I've heard the stories, that again, this was pretty much recorded, as it was when it was shopped, and the A&R guys were like, is this a joke? Are you serious? Is this a demo? They were like, man, this sounds good enough to go to radio already. And
Well, I
you
mean,
know,
the amazing thing is that recording is as good as it was. Went around to all the record labels, and they all turned it down. In fact, the record exec at Epic, who ended up signing us, had a rejection letter on his walls rejecting the demo. A letter to Tom Scholz saying, thank you, but we're not interested. And he had it up there as a point that everybody makes mistakes.
yeah, even the Beatles got rejected multiple times. It's like I
I,
say, there.
I think part of it was so different from what was going on that they were a little leery of jumping in. Of course, like everything else in the music business, as soon as that came out, everybody wanted something just like it.
Well, that's always the way. There's leaders and followers, and so many of our great trailblazers and game changers over the years, you know, kind of stood out. They were like, this isn't the trend. This isn't what the record labels are trying to follow,
Yeah,
and then when one person took a chance, like you say, now everybody's following them, and they seem to rewrite history. Like, yeah, I knew that was going to be big. Nobody wants to,
yeah.
you know, take the loss, so to speak. But
Sure. Yeah.
obviously, I know when you guys first hit the road with that, August, September of '76, you're playing small clubs and little theaters and stuff. And talk about that in real time, just as you're playing these shows. you're hearing all these reports like, wow, radio is really growing, and the venues start getting bigger, and now you're offered the Sabbath tour or whatever. Talk about just feeling that growth, like while you were out working it.
Well, before the record came out, we knew we had some dates coming up, so we booked a rehearsal room. Of course, we didn't have any of the equipment that we needed in order to go out and tour. So at the time, Sib had an orange Dodge van, and we drove around in the Dodge van with the listings for used equipment, and bought the amplifiers and the drums and all the other pieces of gear that we needed. And as we were rehearsing, we were in this rehearsal hall that had a bunch of different acts rehearsing there. We were asking people, well, gee, we need somebody to do the sound. Anybody that could do the sound, or, anybody can do lights, or we need people to handle equipment. Hey, you want to be a roadie? And, that's pretty much how it all came together. So, those first early dates in the clubs was pretty ragtag, but, the interest in the album was huge. And, we had lines going around the block waiting to get into these clubs, 4 or 5 times the number of people that could fit in there, which totally took us by surprise. And, only after doing that a matter of months, we were offered our first tour, opening up for Black Sabbath, which was really the first time we went out on a major tour.
Yeah, that had to be, a real change. You're playing clubs, and now all of a sudden you're out there in an arena or something with Ozzy Osbourne and Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler and Bill Ward. What was that like to step on, those stages early on and see this big cavernous hall where you can, besides the front rows, you can barely see the people?
Well, it was pretty interesting because we were a little, leery of the bill. Boston and Black Sabbath might seem like an odd pairing, but we did really, really well, and we sold a lot of tickets, which pleased the guys in Black Sabbath, and they were great to us. We really got to know them, and Sib and I would go to see them every time they came in town, right up until recent years. So really great guys, super people.
Yeah, well, it got you used to those bigger halls because you guys quickly became, your own arena headliners, and there were some really famous big outdoor stadium shows and all that. And that's got to be a big trip. All of a sudden you're on your second tour with Don't Look Back, and you're playing Anaheim Stadium or the New Orleans Superdome or the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, things like that. It got to be a little surreal when you're looking out and you're thinking, God, this is where the Dallas Cowboys play.
Well, I think things took off really early. Obviously we did that tour with Black Sabbath in the fall of '76, the year the record came out. And by the beginning of '77, we were already headlining in arenas. And we toured for pretty much a year and a half, constantly playing all the arenas around the country. We played every major, secondary, and tertiary city in the country twice. So we were everywhere. Of course, after the second record, things took another step from there, and we ended up touring, playing in stadiums. And we played Giant Stadium, we played the Orange Bowl, we played the Superdome and Anaheim Stadium, really enormous venues. And I mean, it was awe-inspiring, really. I remember we played the Superdome, and the stage was so tall that the stage was like 2 stories off the ground. So, when you went out to the front of the stage to play to the crowd, you look down, it's like, oh my God, if I take a step in the wrong direction, I'm dead. So it just took it to, a whole nother level.
So they didn't have a fence on the edge or a net below, huh? It was just like,
Well, I mean, you can't really be performing on a stage with a fence across the front, like what a bunch of whips, look at that.
yeah, no, I'm
But,
joking,
but I
but
had to keep it
still,
in mind, especially at the time, because, we were wearing the platform shoes and
yeah,
the
you
tight
could
outfits.
hit a little piece of ice and take a slip forward,
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I know, traditionally they always say that you have your whole life to write your first album, and then the record company's jumping up and down. We need another record. We need another album. And obviously this one, the first one took years to make, and evolve. What was that like? I know you had to create and you wanted to deliver something as good, but what was it like being in that whirlwind? You're on a rocket ride on the first album, and then the record company's demanding, we need a new product.
Well, if you think about it, the first record was 6 years in the making. And as soon as we finished touring on the first record, the day we got home, the record label was, well, where's the new record? Well, new record, we just got home, there is no new record. So there was a tremendous amount of pressure to deliver on that. And, most of the pressure was on Tom, obviously being the main writer and producer. And I think he felt as though that second record came out before he was ready to put it out. I think it's still a great record, and it was very well received, and I think ultimately sold 6 million copies. So it all worked out. But yeah, there was a lot of pressure to keep things moving.
Yeah, they're looking at the coffers, the bottom line. They're not thinking about the artistic, needs, to gestate and build these, new fresh ideas. They're only looking at trying to save their jobs and having a good quarter, so to speak, for the
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
company.
that's true.
Now, obviously, famously, you've told the story that Tom, after that second album tour, wanted to take a little break and try and, chill out and save his brain and, do it hopefully the next project when it was really time. And he told you and all the guys, we're going to take a break. So, if you want to do solo projects or whatever, this is the time. But obviously you really delivered, on your solo album. Your friend Brad Delp, worked closely with you, and childhood friend Seb Haitian, on drums. And so you definitely had, a lot of the core of, Boston on your first solo album. And I know famously when that ad came out, talking about 7 million people know this guitar sound, and, it's time to meet the guy behind it. Had you seen that ad, or was this just something they put out, on their own?
Well, I had seen the ad, and the way it was written, it was you've heard the sound of this guitar, and we want to introduce you to its owner. So to me, that was saying, here's the other guy that you don't know about that we want to introduce you to. But Tom felt as though what they were saying is, here's the guy behind Boston, and I suppose, it's how you perceive it. Looking back on it, it was really more of a band album than a solo record. I had started writing some songs, and I had Brad come down to sing on them, since Brad was one of my best friends. Some people don't realize it, but he was actually my brother-in-law as well. And Seb I had played with in bands since I was 15, and I saw him every day virtually anyway. So it just made a lot of sense to me to have those guys be involved. And initially, Brad and I brought the songs that we had to Tom in the hopes that Tom would show some interest in the songs and maybe use them on a Boston record, because I would have been much happier having one song in a Boston record than having a solo record. Because honestly, I hadn't really had a desire to do a solo record. It was Tom that put the idea in my head, and eventually I went ahead with it. So, hindsight being 2020, I probably would have handled things differently. If I had known it was going to be a career record rather than something I was doing on the side, uh, I would have invested some more time in it, and I probably would have made it, under a band name rather than my own name. But hey,
Yeah,
it is
you
what
can't
it is.
change the past, but obviously the record company's not going to be shy. They're going to try and capitalize on any angle they can, to get this next hit product, and
Sure,
you
sure.
know, I know it caused the rift, and now you're out of the band, and you're forming Orion the Hunter, and moving on, and I know Brad's been with you on so many projects, and in your history, and I know obviously Boston ends up suing the manager and getting out of the label deal, and so it was really the beginning of so much turmoil, and to a lot of us, we really felt that the true Boston was those first two albums, and there is a name, and there is a band, and there has been a few more releases, but the magic you guys had, on the first two records is what we really consider, the true Boston magic. And I know it's a little intimidating again to carry that on into the future. You're always kind of judged against what you've done before, but with the Ryan the Hunter project and the RTZ, what do you look the most fondly back on those projects that you felt creatively you achieved?
Um, well, I mean, both albums were, relatively successful. The Orion the Hunter album, we had a single of "So You Ran" that did well on radio. We did a video, it was on MTV to back that up, and we went out and did a tour opening up for Aerosmith, which was a pretty interesting situation back in the '80s. Um, so I have looked back on that with good feelings about it. The RTZ record, with Brad singing, I think it was a really great piece of work. Recording wise, I think that was a standout. Chris Lloyd Alge produced it for us, and did a tremendous job. And it was actually one of the first totally digital recordings, which I think a lot of people probably don't realize. And we toured on that and had some pretty good success. We had one song, "Until Your Love Comes Back Around," that Brian Mace wrote, became number one in the DC, Washington area, and we did a video to back that up as well. So I look back and really good feelings about it, thinking I really accomplished something there. I mean, if you look at the success of those in terms of the success of Boston, it's apples and oranges. There's only a handful of bands in the world that have sold as many records as Boston. So I still look back on the records I did as a success, and something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. You really can't, compare, with especially the first Boston album. You guys captured lightning in a bottle. It was just the right songs with the right sound and the right timing, and it's
Well,
impossible.
they were saying that the second record wasn't as successful as the first because it only sold 6 million copies. 6 million copies. So it's all relative.
Yeah, the bean counters at the corporations, they always want the stock to go up. So in their minds, anything less,
Yeah,
is
sure.
not. But we all look at this stuff creatively. Great music. I always say there's only two kinds of music: music that moves you, and music that doesn't. It doesn't depend on the category or what label it's on or who produced it. It's just, did it move you? Does it move you? Does it make you feel something, whether it's good or introspective, whatever that may be. Well,
Yeah,
that
good,
brings
good
us,
point.
yeah, it brings us to Barry Goudreau's Engine Room. And I know you have your first album out and the second one is rolling out now. Tell us the kind of the concept behind that name and the team you've put together for these projects.
Well, like I mentioned Sid before, Sid Hash and I worked together since I was 15 years old, and he was always my favorite drummer. And whenever Sid was playing drums, would look back and say, "Yeah, there's Sid back there in the engine room, keeping things going." So when it came time for me to name the band, I think it was Brian Mace, our keyboard player singer, who said, "Hey, how about Engine Room?" And it just clicked. It made sense. The first Engine Room CD we did 2017 was was kind of me looking back to my blues roots. I learned how to play guitar, play lead guitar, playing along with Chicago blues albums like the Paul Butterfield Band, which I loved, and that's really how I got my guitar chops together. So the first Engine Room record was kind of looking back at my blues roots. So that record was more towards the blues end of things. There were some straight ahead rock songs, but kind of a mix. But this record is me looking back to my rock roots back like early 70s, the early Deep Purple and Joe Walsh, a huge Joe Walsh fan. So, I was kind of looking for that kind of feel sound of the early classic rock of the 70s. And I think we really nailed it on this record. It really has that sound and feel about it. And people that have heard it so far just seem to love it. I think classic rock fans are really going to go for this one.
Yeah, we love that sound, we grew up with, but we want it updated, and I know you've got that, those roots, in your DNA, and to bring something fresh and new without the dilution of a record label telling you what you should sound like, or this is the new trend, or you got to put this kind of sound on there. We know
Sure.
it's pure music and it's from the heart. Can you tell us about any of the songs, and if there's like a message or story behind them lyrically, or if just ones that you feel that you've accomplished, the most creatively with on the new album?
Well, the album is called The Road, and one of the songs on the record is The Road. It kind of looks back, being out on tour, traveling around on the bus, and the situations and the people that you meet, and the kind of feeling you have being in front of a crowd. Um, Also, we have some other songs. The opening song in the record is called "Love Will Lead the Way," and it's a kind of a positive message song, which is something I think everybody could use at this point, having gone through this whole COVID thing. Fortunately for us, we had done most of the recording before the COVID hit, so we were able to finish it, through the whole COVID thing, and finally get it worked out. But I think that song has a really positive message to it, and it seems to be something people really need at this point. I certainly do.
Yeah, and what was your approach to producing this when you went in and said it's time to make these new records? Was there any kind of attitude or kind of feeling you most wanted to capture?
Well, I've got a home recording studio, and Brian Mace, the keyboard player, has a studio as well. So the first record we did as a co-production. I have to plug my computer in here before I go dead. There we go. You don't want to cut you off right in the middle. So on this record, I had Brian produce the record, which turned out really well, because I realized that I play better when I'm in front of an audience. And even if that audience is just one other person, it sort of kicks it up for me, and having somebody to knock it off of, and, get ideas back and kick things around really helped a lot. And honestly, I think this is some of the best guitar playing I've played in years. And I've told some people that I think there's more guitar on this record than my last 2 or 3 records combined. There's a full hour of music on the CD, and there's several long songs and lots of long guitar solos. So lots of good stuff on there.
Yeah, I always say there's a big difference between 0 and 1. If you're playing to a bare wall, there's no feedback. But if there's one person who's into it and they're making facial expressions or hand gestures, there's a big difference between 0 and 1. It may be one person, but like you say, you're feeling like you're performing to, an audience, and you can multiply that 1 times many, but it's a human being that's reacting, to your music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, now, how many songs total are on this album?
There are 12 songs, and like I said, it's a full 60 minutes of music on there. So it's a really good piece of work. Stylistically, we have a couple of ballads on the record. We have one live track, long live track with lots of solos, guitar solo, bass solo, keyboard solo. And, we have 3 women who sing backup. And on this record, we gave them a little more leeway and have them sing lead on a few things. So we have some female voices singing lead on this record as well, which kind of mixes things up a bit.
Yeah, it's always good to hear that yin and the yang, a little female voice in there really helps, kind of diversify the sound a little bit and, bring that human element to it,
Yeah, some of the acts in the early 70s, had the female voices there. And we actually, when we were doing the first Engine Room record, we brought the girls in to sing in one song. And I really loved it. I said, well, let's try this on another song. We tried it on another song. We ended up having them in every song. So, so we decided, that's going to be part of the band, and that's going to be, part of the sound of the band.
Yeah, well, we're going to spread the word. We're so excited. Barry Goudreau's Engine Room is the project. You definitely want to be checking both albums out, especially the new one. Barry, now I know it's a little hard to talk about, but the loss of your dear friend Brad Delp, member of your family. We lost him way too soon. What do you think should be the legacy, that people should most remember? Obviously, the music is out there for people to enjoy forever, but Brad the person, what do you think his legacy should be remembered as?
Well, I mean, he was one of the best singers in rock and roll. No, absolutely no doubt about it. If Brad was sitting next to you and he was singing, it sounded as though his voice was already processed through all the best equipment. It was just there. And he would come here to record, and, I would give him a musical track and he would write lyrics. And, he would never tell me what he had written until he showed up and sang it for me. And he said, okay, give me a track. And he'd sing that track, and give me another track, and he'd do a harmony, give me another one. And he'd layer all these harmonies on without having to redo anything at all. Just one shot for every single one, and put this whole thing layered together. And it was just fantastic. Super talent. And he was really a very, very sweet guy. Everybody that ever met him, backstage at a show, he was always the last one to leave, because he didn't want anybody that wanted to meet him and say hello or wanted an autograph. He didn't want to have to turn anybody down. And he was always the last one to leave. And, you had to drag him away as he was, signing something for somebody. Just a super sweet guy. And and it was absolutely shock to us, you know, that he had committed suicide. You know, anybody who's been in that situation, you know, there's a certain amount of guilt involved that you didn't recognize that there was an issue. And with Brad, we just didn't see that there was an issue until it was too late. So very, very sad, but you know, very sweet person, left a tremendous legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the great thing about music, you know, it lives on forever. And, you know, the spirit that he had is evident, you know, in the songs, and you have him on so many of your projects. So I know your music and his, you know, will live for generations to come. We want to remind everybody you can get the CD by going to Barry's websites, and that's Barry Goudreau's Engine Room, and that's BARRYGOUDREAUS, and then Engine Room, ENGINEROOM. The link will be right below this interview. And, you know, Barry has his own website, also barrygoudreau.com. But come check it out. The album is called The Road. It is got 12 amazing songs. And we couldn't be more excited to see you keeping this, you know, the music growing. And I know there's lots of music inside of you. Is there any hints on, you know, the next record or any other projects you might have in mind, you know, coming up in the future?
Well, this record is getting released next week, so I'm not looking past this one yet. Our hope is that, you know, the COVID thing finally dies down and we were able to get out and start doing some dates. We're booked a record release on June 5th. And we're hopeful that by June 5th, we'll be able to go out and play in front of a great crowd. And that'll be the beginning of a lot of dates out promoting the record and meeting up with our fans.
Yeah, I know you got a lot of music inside of you. Obviously, there's more to come, but right now the focus is on the road, and we want everybody to hopefully join Barry and his bandmates on the road. You know, keep checking the website for new updates on shows. We can't wait to hopefully see you make yourself, you know, out here to the West Coast sometime. And I know you have great memories of California and Oregon and Washington State. You know, so many great areas out here you guys have played. So
Yeah.
yeah, please go get Barry's new album. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It was great talking to you.